Princess Cruises recently announced an extension of their pause of operations in Australia until the end of May 2021. So I thought it was a good time to review the Australian cruise ban and what's been going on here in Australia. Since the 27th of March, there has been a ban on foreign flagged cruise ships from entering Australian ports. This ban has been extended numerous times throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and at the time of upload, it had been extended till the 17th of December 2020. And there is every chance that it will be extended further, probably well into 2021, with Australia's international border also remaining closed at this time. As a result of this closure, all of the cruise ships that were operating in Australia that weren't flagged in Australia had to leave Australian waters. Most of them, at least the big ones, went to lay up in the Philippines, and they have not been allowed back since. This has resulted in the cancellation of dozens of itineraries across a variety of shipping lines. At the beginning of March, most of us didn't really have any idea what to expect in 2020, as we all came to terms with the rapidly developing coronavirus outbreak. As far as travel was concerned, there were certainly some fears around coronavirus, but cruises and other holidays were still, in Australia at least, mostly going ahead. There had been itinerary changes and redeployments, with several ships being redeployed from Asia into Australian destinations. But for the most part, things remained relatively normal. But in mid-March, everything changed. And in fact, I was on board the Queen Mary 2 when this happened, this major change to cruising around the world. You can check out a video from the Queen Mary 2 in the info card or the description below. The first major impact was when the cruise industry entered into a voluntary cruise pause. Less than 2 weeks later, the Australian government banned foreign cruise ships from entering Australian waters. This included the ships of the P&O Cruises Australia fleet, which has been operating out of Australia consistently for decades and has an operational headquarters in New South Wales. However, their ships are registered in the United Kingdom. All foreign flag ships had to leave, and the ports around Australia began to look empty. Initially, the cruise pause was to last 30 days. And the ships that were deployed to Australia remained close by. But both the cruise pause and the Australian cruise ban have continued on, and now there is no large-scale Australian cruising planned from any of the major international brands until late December at the very earliest. P&O Cruises Australia have extended their pause in operations until the 8th of January 2021. Royal Caribbean have suspended all sailings until December 31st, 2020. And Carnival has cancelled cruises until mid-February next year. Princess do not foresee returning until the end of May, while Cunard, which had Queen Elizabeth based here, will not be back in Australia until December of 2021. Australian authorities have taken the threat of coronavirus very seriously, and it's not just cruising that has been impacted. In fact, as I mentioned, the international border here remains closed, so you can't easily fly into or out of Australia by aircraft. Furthermore, some of the states in Australia actually also have their borders closed to other states. This is because some states have had no community transmission of COVID since as early as April, whereas others have struggled a bit more with containing the virus. Despite the cruise ban, there are some cruises happening in Australia. 2 Australian-owned and operated brands with Australian flag ships have recently recommenced cruising. Coral Expeditions offers expedition cruises on a fleet of small ships. They have recently returned to cruising on the east coast of Australia with their ship Coral Discoverer. With space on board for 72 passengers, it is a very different experience from the big mass-market cruise ships that have been visiting Australia over the past 2 decades. The True North is another ship now offering itineraries. This Western Australian-based cruise brand offers luxury small ship cruising. At the moment, their itineraries are limited to Western Australian ports and to Western Australian residents, as the state currently has the tightest border controls in the country. In addition to the mass cancellation of itineraries, the cruise pause and the Australian cruise ban has led to a change in the ships that will be returning from these various brands. Australia had long been the home to Pacific Dawn, a P&O Cruises ship that's been operating here since 2007. It was planned for Pacific Dawn to leave the P&O Australia fleet early next year, but with the cruise ban in place, she won't be returning to Australian waters at all, and has in fact been sold to become a floating community off the coast of Panama. Pacific Aria is another cruise ship that's been operating in Australia since 2015. She has been sold from the fleet. It was originally intended for her to go to CMV, but she's since been on-sold to Seajets. Pacific Adventure, the former Golden Princess, was originally due to enter the P&O Australia fleet this year. However, she will now not enter P&O service until at least 30th of April 2021. Pacific Encounter, which was another Grand Class ship due to enter P&O's fleet in late 2021, will now enter the fleet in May, bringing her entry into service forward. So the P&O Australia fleet will look very different when the cruise ban is lifted, with Pacific Encounter and Pacific Adventure joining Pacific Explorer in cruises out of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. So have you been impacted by the Australian cruise ban, or do you live in a country where cruising is still allowed? Let me know in the comments below. If you found the video interesting, please give it a like, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And when it is safe for us to travel again, I hope to see you on board.